Hello everybody, my name is Slushy and I'm going to go ahead and explain on how I would do UI. In terms of UI, there are two known systems that I'm aware of that will handle UI. The first term is called functional, and then the second one is non-functional. The reason why I'm separating these two is because you can do UI differently depending on its use case. Let's say you have a UI that pops up in front of you, and you only want to explain on how to do certain things in a mod. Well, this is considered a non-functional UI because it doesn't do anything outside of this UI element. You just churn a page on the UI like a book to display information. But the moment you want the UI to pass information around, it's considered functional. And what this just means is let's say you have a dino in front of you and you want this UI to pop up in your face and you have the option to kill this dino. This is a functional because the UI cannot talk to the dino. So you need a system called a buffer in my case. Down below on the screen are going to be two separate timestamps presenting when we will start those specific systems of UI. We will separate them, but the system will be mostly the same between each other. And we're going to go ahead and get started on the non-functional first. And you can, like I said, you skip ahead to the functional. Okay, so this part of the video will be for non-functional. A couple items that we are going to do this for non-functional is I am wanting to have a UI pop up in front of the player's face, and this will basically be a UI used to explain on how a mod works. The way I'm going to work this out is we're going to have a book in front of us, and you can turn the pages, and it will present the information that you are wanting to present in front of the player, but this book will not do anything outside of just that fact. We're going to go ahead and set up for this system. In order to do this the way that I would do it is I'm going to go ahead and go find a primal item that I would like to use. In my case, I'm going to use gunpowder. I just like using gunpowder. Okay, go ahead and copy and paste your primal item that is going to trigger the UI. We're going to go ahead and open up the booklet. I'm just going to name it so we can, do a little bit of pre-setup. Okay. Once you go ahead and have your primal item, we're going to go and open the full blueprint. And there's a couple presets. So the preset that we need to set for this item is called top level. What this is when you right click an item in your inventory, you get those options to consume now, drop, stack, whatever. This is where you can actually add your own elements here. We're going to go ahead and name this open book. And so basically the player will click this button and this will get triggered. Okay. I miss a node by accident, so go ahead and type in custom context. We'll enable that on. And the node we will be using is called event selected custom context menu item. If you go ahead and compile that, we'll go ahead and press play, and we'll go ahead and give ourselves this item. Now with that item given to you, you can go ahead and right click it, and you'll have a new option called open book, just to verify it to show you. And then there's that new option. If we click that, then that function will run. That's what we are wanting. Second thing that we're going to need before we fully get totally inverse into it, we're going to go back into our all file, and we are going to use a buff base. We're going to use this as a buffer, and this is not super needed, but it is going to be super useful down the line. So we're going to go ahead and get a buff base. We're going to name it just buff UI helper, and next we are going to need a blueprint class. So we click blueprint class. We're going to type primal UI. Go ahead and select that. And then this will be our book UI element. So we have a primal item, we have our buff base, and then we have a book. We're going to go ahead and go into the buff base real quick. And we need to clean this up. So we're going to go ahead and remove all these graphs, remove that graph, remove that function, go into class default, type BP deactivate. We do want that on. So we're going to go and close it. Next thing we're going to search for is hide. We're going to go ahead and force hide the floating name, the HUD, and the timer. Next thing is we're going to look up deactivate. We don't want to deactivate this buff. We will call a buff. And before we move on to the UI, let's go ahead and preset up some graphing that will be used to remove the buff. So we're going to go ahead and do a custom event. You're going to do a total of 3 of these. So we have custom event 1, duplicate it and duplicate it. This is going to be called remove buff. And this is going to be typed ROC, and I'll explain that in a second. And then we're going to do that naming convention for all of these, ROS, and remove buff ROM. Right? These are our 3 nodes. For the ROC, we are going to right click and keywords not replicated, switch it to owning client, reliable. Do the same thing for this one, but this one's going to be run on server, reliable. And then the same thing for this one, multicast, reliable. And now we'll go ahead and connect these all up. So now, all right, now we'll go ahead and connect all these up. So the ROC will call the ROS. The ROS will call the ROM. And off of the ROM, we're going to go ahead and do BP deactivate. And we're also going to do, just in case we have issues with this deactivate, I've had issues before, we're going to go ahead and deactivate it. And then we're going to go ahead and destroy it. We're going to just clean that up. So now this will tell, let's say the ROC will go to the ROS, the ROS will go to the ROM, and there we go. This will basically remove the bus, but we start on client, and we tell the server, and then the server will tell both the client and the server to remove themselves. We can go ahead and select all these nodes except for that one, right-click it, and do collapse to nodes, and remove buff. All this does is it just collapses it into a secondary system so we can minimize and not have to look at all of it. Go back out. So now the buff is mostly set up. I'm going to go ahead and minimize for a minute, go into our UI, and this is our UI element that we will be working on. But before we call the UI, we have to do a couple things. So we go back all the way to the primal item, go ahead and close that. And now we need to do a little bit of information. We have to do some passing around. So this node right here is ran on server, and so we need to, that is totally fine. If we go back to our class defaults and do custom top again, the name of this element is open book, so I'm going to copy that, pull off of this, and then do equal. And if we hit our custom, if we do custom context menu item, and that context equals this, go ahead and branch, connect it through, and then for PC, we'll go ahead and create a get player by controller, and then we'll cast to the player pawn test. We'll go ahead and connect that in. We'll go ahead and connect that, clean up my graph for a moment. And so now basically we are essentially getting the player based off of the PC that ran this, and then we'll do an add static buff, damage causer, and force on client. We're gonna do the buff UI helper. All we're doing is basically adding the buff to the player. Go and compile that, go back into here. And now this primal item should, when using that context option, we should get the buff. And if we go ahead and go into our outliner, just pre-search buff. So when you hit play, give ourselves the item that we made, right click the primal item and do open book. And so now we should have the UI buff that we need. We'll go ahead and close this for a moment. Go ahead and go into your buff now. The next thing's next. We need a begin play. On begin play, we will go ahead and trigger the opening of the UI. So we're going to go ahead and open that. So to do that, we're going to do a delay, just because it takes a second to come up onto client. Once we do our delay, we'll go ahead and do a create widget. Go ahead and create the widget that we want. And we're going to do book UI, our UI element that we made. We'll go ahead and after that, we'll do add to viewport. And now our UI should pop up in our face. But just, there is a slight issue. I did forget we need a branch right here. And then off of that branch we do is owning client. Go ahead and clean up my graph for a moment. So again, we'll begin, delay, are we the owner of this buff? And then we will add that to the thing. If you do not have this node, this UI element will pop up on every single connected player. So we don't want that. So now that that is done, we'll go ahead and open up our UI. Now, so UE5 UI is a little bit difficult to work with, but there are tons of tutorial videos that will explain on how to get this properly set up. So I'm going to go ahead and before we do that, before we work with the UI fully, I did forget one thing. If we go into the graph section for the UI, we need to set a couple settings on the right hand side. We need to first force virtual cursor enabled, as well as capture mouse input. So that way when the UI opens, we do not move, and we can only get out if we hit escape or close. I'm going to go ahead and delete those nodes just for the moment. I'm going to go ahead and do my variables, and I need to pass in the buff so we can get rid of the buff in case the UI closes not properly. So we're going to call that buff UI helper. And then we will, once we added that, we'll go ahead and expose on spawn. That should make this and this now correct. Go ahead and compile that. Go back to the buff. Now, if we right click on this crate, the widget, we need to refresh it because now we have the buff. So we'll go ahead and grab a self reference. And now the UI has access to the buff. So we'll go ahead and go into our book UI element. And I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit of my personal time getting up a very simple setup. All right. Once you have your UI set up, then we can proceed. But in my case, I'm going to go ahead and explain on how I set my UI up. So I have my canvas. I have my background border. This just pulled a random icon from Google. I have another border that's acting as a holder for a left scale box. So a scale box. a right side border, and then a right side scale. These are just renamed for purposes down the line. We have a close button at the top. We have a cycle left button with a text, cycle right button, and then a text. These are just buttons. You can spend a lot of time customizing a lot of things, but we're not going to go over that in this video. We're just going to explain on how to do the communication part. I'm going to go ahead and spend a little bit of time making what we're going to call a page. There's multiple pages, so multiple bits of information. So we're going to go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, we're going to go ahead and make another UI element. As you can see, this is where I brought my texture in. I'm going to go ahead and right click and do a blueprint class. I'm going to do another primal UI, my page. Okay, and we'll go ahead and open that up. And this is basically, these will generate every single time. Just for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and do a canvas. And then I'm going to do a secondary canvas. And the secondary canvas will handle holding everything that we need. So in my case, I just have very brief information. So I'm going to go ahead and do a grid. And this grid panel, this will be set to size with content. Okay, so the reason why we did a grid panel is so let's say you want some pictures. So we'll do a picture, and then you can, I believe you can, if you mess with a couple settings, you can get a page that will look like this. Okay, so just in my case for this page, we have a canvas, we have another canvas, we have a border that is going to act like the picture, we have a text number, this will represent the page number that we're on, another border, another scale box, padding of 2, and text info that we will basically inject that wherever we want per page. So I'm going to go ahead and compile that. A couple little things to note. We're going to have to go back to the master UI, go back to that. And for every little option that we want to be able to access, we need to make sure it is a variable. So if we go ahead and click on this left scale box, we need to make sure that this is a variable that can be used in the graphing. If you go into the graphing, you can see that these are all our options so far. So we need to go back to our designer, and for every option we want to go ahead and enable. And in my case, I just have this right side and then this left side. These are my two importance. All right. Now with that the case, we'll go into our other UI element, and we will go ahead and say that this text information is important. So let's go ahead and name it. This is going to be our page info, and then down below is going to be our another variable. This is our page number. And lastly, for this border, we also want it to be, because this is going to act like our image that we want to put here. Now that is everything you're going to need for that. We'll go ahead and go back into our UI element. And now we'll get started on actual graphing for the system. So let's go ahead and graph. There's one little couple things we need. If this UI element closes, so that close button, that is that variable, button elements, we do on click. We want to remove from viewport. Remove from viewport. The problem is, though, if we remove the UI and the user does not have if we remove the UI, we still need to remove the buff, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to do an event removed from viewport. And now with the remove from viewport, we'll do my buff, but we need the ROC one. So ROC. There was an issue when I made this node right here. I had to check off depreciated. I don't know why it was on. Go back to UI, and we'll do remove buff, and we'll call the ROC, because the ROC client. So the reason why we had the buff in the first place is so we can do some replication issues that happen with UI. UI can only exist on the client. It cannot exist on server. We need to tell the buff to remove itself. So we'll call the function, we'll remove the buff, and da-da-da-da. That is how we're going to remove the buff. We're going to go ahead and select that all, do a comment, press C for comments, and just remove self and our buff. Before we go ahead and test it out, another function that we will need to do is we will do event construct. On the event construct, we're going to do a sequence. Now that we have our sequence, we will go ahead and actually close the player's inventory, because our UI will go over that and we don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and just right click open space and get PC, and then get shooter, and then get currently open HUD UI, pull off of that one, and then we'll do close with animation. This will make it so our player's inventory closes. And now everything's to show. I'll show you guys how it works. We go ahead and right click, open book. Now we have that UI element. We can go ahead and close it, and we should now have no buff. Perfect. Okay. Now that we go back to our graph, We will go ahead and do a little bit of logic. We need to know what page we start on, so we're going to do variable, new variable. This is going to be an integer, and this is going to be current page. And now that that's good, go ahead and do a set node, bring that down, and we will then go find our cycle left buttons that we made, which are these two buttons down below. This is our page manager. So for the cycle left, we want to go ahead and do an on-click event, bring it over, and we will also do a cycle right. We'll do an on-click event. Next thing is next. Let's go ahead and make a function just to be a little bit nicer. So custom event, cycle pages. And then this does not need to be changed in any way, but it does need a new input. And we're going to do page, and we are going to do an integer. So now this function will request a page. So if we go ahead and call that function on the two click cycles, so go ahead and do that. And for this system, we're going to go ahead and do for the cycle left, that means we're going to the left. So this is a -1. And then if we go to the right, we do a +1. So yeah. Now that that's good, we'll go ahead and go down here and we'll go ahead and get the current page and we'll do plus whatever page that we want. And we'll go ahead and set it, go ahead and clean it. We'll do another function. Well, this is going to be called up dynamic pages. Apologies, I messed up. So we'll go ahead and make a new custom event. This will be made after the cycle pages. And then on that, we'll make another function, remove pages. We'll grab the left scale, clear the children of that one. With the right scale, we'll clear the children of that. And now we'll do the dynamic page updater. So in order to do this, we first need to remove any existing pages that are already there. This will clear the UI. And then we'll actually do the dynamic system. Go ahead and do our click button, cycle pages. So this will be a -1. So cycle page will pass in, we'll plus it in. And back before we do actually set it, we do need to clamp this. So if we go ahead and clamp that, and we're gonna have a minimum and maximum, which is gonna be 3. So we only have 4 pages, 0 counts as 1. Okay, now that we clamped our integer, we will go ahead and do our system that will handle all of our UI and everything. Switch on int, and you can, for every page, so there's 4 pages, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do a custom event to preset all of this information through the master UI, or you can have multiple secondary pages preset up all ready to go. It's just you would have a bunch of them and you would just call them. And so, but in my case, I'm going to inject my own settings into it. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create one new function. It's going to be a custom event. And this is add page. And being we are on an index, so we're going to go ahead and add a page. We're going to do a construct widget. And this is going to take a true or false. This is going to be left or right. It's going to be a boolean. And if this boolean is branch, we don't want it there. So what we'll go ahead and do is my page. And being we are taking a true or false, we are going to go ahead and set up a little bit of information. So for starters, let's go ahead and compile it before we carry on. Go to the my page. So we know that this info will dynamically change, but we do need to set up some information. So we'll go back into our graph for this object and delete these, and then we'll rebring that construct back. So on event construct, we want to know what our page number is. We want to know the page info, and we want to know our page inventory or image. So if we go back into designer, we know that the image is going to be a brush image. So let's go ahead and do that. Image is a get or set brush from texture. So we're importing a texture here. Page info, we only want that to be a number, so we're going to do set text. And then same thing for I apologize. We'll do the same thing for text on set text. And so this information will get passed on. So we have our page number. Oops, we do need to promote these variables. So we do a promote on variable. This is our page number. Page number text. And then we do a page again. And we'll do, this one is going to be our page info. It helps to type that right. Page info text. And then we also have an icon. So we're going to go ahead and promote that. and then this is my icon or my picture. And all this information we'll go ahead and we'll execute it right through, and then I can press F to clean it up. And we do want these variables, these ones, to be expose on spawn, expose on spawn, and expose on spawn. So we have a text, and then another text, and then a texture. We go back to the master UI, refresh this. Now we have all those options we can inject that we want. So we're going to go ahead and connect that up, clean this up a bit. Okay, so now that we created our thing, we're going to go ahead and page number text is going to go over to the add page. Same for this and the picture. And so now when we do an add page, we have all this information we can pass to that UI element. So being we're on page 0, we want 2 pages. Remember, we are clearing the, we aren't clearing, and then we'll run that right before we set this. So we'll go ahead and do clear pages, and we'll go ahead and move this around a little bit. Okay. So my page, if it is on the, so now that we create this value, now we'll go ahead, once you have cleaned up your graph, it should look like similar like this. We'll cycle the pages. We will clear the current pages that we have, and then we will update the index, and then we'll switch on the index. And so we are going to go ahead and add a page, and we're going to do this twice per thing. All right, and for pin index 0, we are going to go ahead and just pass it through. And I'm going to do this 3 more times. So I just quickly cleaned it up real quick. We have this one on the left, this one on the left, this one on the left, and then this one on the left. For page 0, technically, you have page 0 on the left. So this one will be 1, and then this one will be 2. And then any page information and any icons you want to add there, we're going to go ahead and carry on. So page 3, but we don't want that last page. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. So you have a total of 7 pages or indexes. You have index 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, for page 1, we just want to say Flint is awesome, or whatever information that we are currently setting up. Flint is totally not awesome. And next page we'll talk about stone. Stone is gray. And then fourth page we'll talk about obsidian is rad. Fifth page we'll talk about crystal is white. And then sixth page we'll talk about the fitness pace is grin. And then 7th page let's say credits due, and then you can sign your name, whatever, doesn't matter. All right, so we're talking about Flint here, so let's go ahead and pass on the Flint icon. Flint icon, this is talking about Flint 2. Let's go ahead and do the Flint. This is talking about stone, so let's pass in a stone icon. This is talking about obsidian, so let's go ahead and pass in the obsidian. This is talking about crystal, so let's go ahead and talk about crystal. This one's talking about the fitness pacergram, so let's just do a random icon because I don't have anything. And then credits, we can do the ARC logo. And now those are all our pages pre-set up with everything that we want. All right, and we'll go up here. And now we'll work on the add page logic. Once we add a page, we are going to go ahead and say, okay, so if we're on the left, then we are going to add this child to the left scale. So we're going to go ahead and do add child, and we're going to do this again. So copy and paste that. And this is going to be for the right one. And then, oh, not for content, we're going to do for target. So target, and then true, we'll add it to the left side. If not, we'll add it to the right side. And then our object will go out. Go ahead and clean up our graph. And so now we add our pages. So rundown is basically we will now click the button. We'll cycle pages -1. When we go to cycle pages, we'll go ahead and plus it, and we'll make sure we're clamping it, and then we'll switch to the pages. We also clear, so we do clear. And then if we cycle to the right, then we go +1. Now, before that, we do need a default. So let's go ahead and set up a default system. We're going to make a secondary, so to make a buff. This is do page, and we're going to go ahead and just do an index. And instead of that, we're going to go into this, into that, so that will replace that, remove that. And we are going to do page. We're going to pass that in. And then that target, go ahead and refresh those indexes because they don't seem to want to refresh. Once more, connect it. And at the event constrict, we're going to pull that back out, do that, and now we have a default. That was what I was messing up. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my graph up a little bit more. All right, let's go ahead and test it up one more time. Give yourself the item, go into full screen just because of UI being weird. Right click the item, open book. Flint is awesome, page 1. Flint is totally not awesome, page 2. Next page. Stone is gray, page 3. Obsidian is rad, next page. Crystal is white, page 5. Icon fitness pacergram, and finally last page. Credits to Slushy. That is going to be everything for non-functional UI. Welcome everybody, and so now we're actually going to make UI that is functional. I'm going to go ahead and show off what I have, and in this section of the video, we are not going to actually show the process of making my UI, because this is a little bit more complex. I'm going to actually show you on how I made this structure dynamically change its material through a multi-entry. So here's my UI element, and just to show that it is working, so if I set my glow amount to, let's say 5, set my metallic to 0, roughness to 0, specular 0, refraction index 0, transparency 1, deep blue, let's turn off the glow. So there we go. So this is dynamically changing based off of this UI. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I did it, and you are more than welcome to copy any elements that you see that might work in your case. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and show you how I set this up. Currently, I have a primal item. This primal item places my structure class. This is my structure. I'm gonna go ahead and close and refresh everything. So I have my structure. That's the first thing. I have my UI element and my buff. And I will show you how I set these all up. So first things first, in the rainbow cube, let's go ahead and full screen it, and we'll go through the graphs in a bit. The way I set this up is in class defaults, we have a multi-entry. We have enable multi-use entries on this structure. And we'll add a new function, the get multi and the try multi. You can access these by doing get multi and being in the right here. Well, they would be if they weren't in here. In my multi-entries, all I did was multi-entries gets passed into an add unique, the index, and the priority. No other options selected. Might fix that later. And then our try multi-use, we try it, sequence it to a switch on int, and then we call a function that we want, and then we return. This function will then move over to the giving buff, so we'll run this on server. You can change a system's graph if you open up the details panel, and you can select replicates, run on server. This is important to us. Then we'll grab the PC. We pass the PC through the multi. Grab the buff. We'll grab the PC, get the controller character get character by controller. Passed upon. We'll do all these options. This is the buff class that we'll be working with. It goes onto our character, damage causer, and we do need, it is very important that we have force on client. And then we cast to that buff, and then we add any values that we need to know. For instance, this cube is dynamically changing, so we need to pass that on to the buff. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Once we pass to the buff is added. Go ahead and go over a couple options, or a couple things. When the buff begins, we will go ahead and delay. We'll go, are we the owning client? This is required. If you do not put this, it will not appear on it will only appear on the all players. So if this is not there, this UI element will pop up on everything. So if we own this, we will create a UI widget. We assign our widget that we have, and then we are no owning player because this is a self-reference, and then the my buff will get passed on, and then we'll add it to viewport. Before we carry on, I'm going to go ahead and go over the defaults that I needed. We needed BP deactivate, so we'll go ahead and toggle that on. We will also need not deactivate this buff, so this buff will get removed, or the timer will get removed, and so the buff cannot go away on its own, as well as hide. We will hide the timer, hide the buff, and then hide the floating name. Before we carry on, I need to explain that we need a way to get rid of this buff. So what we'll do is we'll call a kill system ROC. ROC stands for run on client. We'll pass that into a collapse node. This is just a bunch of other nodes. You can do collapse nodes if you just do select all and collapse nodes. we'll pass in, so we tell the kill system to run on server. This is just a node here. So it goes here, run on server, and then we'll tell it to run on multiple. Run on multiple will then deactivate the buff, and then destroy the buff just in case it doesn't go away. If for some reason this does not work, this is a secondary insurance to make sure the buff does go away 100%. Sometimes this doesn't work, sometimes it does. It depends on what you have going on. Go ahead and get out of that. We have a bunch of little information, but we'll come across that later. So now that we have the buff, we'll go ahead and pass the buff to as a variable on the UI object. All right, this part I actually forgot to add to this tutorial, so I'm going to go ahead and do it now. In order to add a primal UI, you just go ahead and right-click an open space. In your content browser, do blueprint class, and you will type primal UI, and this is going to be all the way near the bottom. Click this, go ahead and select it, and then name it however you wish to name it. You will then open it up. Once it is fully opened up, your UI should look like this. If it's just set default, make sure the parent class is UI like we did. Go into your graph, and then you have two options you can enable here. Capture mouse input will basically, when the UI opens, it will not allow the player to move, but you can leave this off if you want this to be accessible, or when you press the buttons, it works when you open your inventory. But you can go ahead and toggle that on. And then if you wish for console players to get that UI cursor to pop up, you need to enable this option as well. These are all my options. In order to make this text object a variable, we need to make sure this is toggled on so we can dynamically change it. Same with this border right here. And yes, you can spend a lot of time making your UI as pretty as you want. And so we have a border, we have a text input, text input, text input. All these are text inputs, and then a button, and then a final button. This is our close button. This is our set and save. Go ahead and go into the graph, and this is going to be a very big graph, but I'll very briefly explain it. So when we construct the UI element, when the buff was spawned, we pass in the owner of the buff, so this needs to be a variable that we'll pass in. This is located right here. And all we did to do this is we just hit toggle on for expose. You go back to the buff and you refresh this create node. This node will now appear. I go ahead and go back. So on construct, which is technically our begin play, we will close the user's inventory component, and then we'll run a bunch of other functions. If in case the player presses that red button on the top left or top right here, we will close the UI. So when we close the UI, we will just remove from viewport. When we do a remove from viewport, we will tell the buff to do its kill system like before. So this will remove the buff. Now we move on. The user pressed the set and save button. We will remove the viewport, and then we'll do a new function that we'll get to later. So if we go back up, so we have a run default and run default other. This function basically will tell us we'll loop through an array. If I go ahead and open up all my variables to make it a little bit easier to explain, so these are all my UI elements, and then these are my master objects. So all we're doing here is we are presetting up these text options. So this is the text option that we want for blue, and then we'll select it based off of an index. I do need to change these a little bit. There was an issue with my code, but we'll basically tell the numeric check. So this is a node that we'll get to in a minute. But here is now the actual physical objects. So when the user presses the red text, we will we'll pass in the text that they committed. In order to get this node, what you can do is go into your RGB text that I had, blue text, and then we'll just click on committed, which is basically when the user presses enter. And you can set that as an option if you do an equals enum. And then these are all the options that we can check for. On default, entered, user move focus, or cleared. But that is not needed right now. Pass in the text and the target. All these systems will pass through a single function. This is the single function. All we're doing is we look at the text the user said, convert it to string, check if it is a number. If it is a number, then we do a clamp on that value. So we convert it to a string, convert the string to an int, clamp the value. And we will go up and convert the int into a text, usable text, and then now we'll set that element. So in summary, all we're doing is if this is a number, then we will grab the object, the text, and uh, we'll do that in a minute, but we will basically, all we're doing here is we're making sure the value is an actual number, and then we clamp it down, so a minimum and maximum. If the user puts in anything like special characters or characters, we will do a check. If they did that, then we'll just automatically set the text to 0, pass that as a variable, and we'll pass it to the dynamic. In case it is a variable, we'll pass it through, and we will then basically, so this color index, so in my case, I had, on this material graph, I have 3 colors, 1 refraction, and then these are all my variables on the instance material. So basically, we assign a number to these. So blue is, I believe, 2, and then, no, I'm sorry, blue is 3, red is 1, and then green is 2. So all we're doing here is, so RGB, if we are index 1, we will set it to red. For index 2, we'll switch it to G, or green, and then 3 for blue. And then once we did that, we'll take the actual value that the user put in, and then we'll pass it over to the value to be set. And all we're doing is we're selecting that specific index. And then once this has ran to save these values, we will change the color display. And that means is basically whatever combination that the user sets here, this color will match that person's information. So what we're just doing here is we are taking all these values and converting them into UE material color line, linear color. This takes a range. There we go. My issue's fixed. So all we did was just basically we're taking the RGB, dividing by 255. That's going to return a 0 to 1. That's going to be used for the material. So we'll convert that to a linear color. All that is this. Once the color is now saved, we'll then go ahead and simply set the UI element. So the color image will then take a tick color, which is broken up into a specified color. Before we get to this is the final node, so we won't do that now. Now we'll go ahead and go back to all the other options. Same thing, we'll set a default on all these UI elements at 0.5 when you first open the UI, and then we'll send in a main thing. So before that, all we're doing here is, let's say we have a glow amount. We take the text, we put it in, just like before. This will take a clamp value of a minimum and a maximum, and as well as an index. So we'll take material index 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, and that's all we're doing. It's basically we're assigning a number to these indexes. We're doing it manually, and that way I can set a minimum and maximum for each of these values that the user has. We'll go ahead and pass it into the new logic. Take the numeric range. We're going to take the text, make sure it's an actual number. If it is not a number, we will just default it to 0, and then we'll pass it on. If it is a number, we'll clamp it, make sure it doesn't reach our range, and then we will pass that information out, but we will also convert it to a text and then set the target text, just like before. Just like the above one, we will take the text and then convert the text into a number and then clamp it, make sure we don't go out of our range that we allow. Once that is finished, we'll go ahead and do all that. We'll then set the other variables. All this is doing is the same thing as above. We are going to basically set the variable based off of the index that we started with. The index is set here. So we'll set the other attributes. First, we'll go ahead and do a switch to set our variables. Glow amount, metallic, roughness, specular, reflection, or refraction, transparency. Once that is completed, we'll go ahead and do the final node. This happens for both the color value, so right here, as well as the other attributes that we have for this material. Go ahead and run this graph. Now this part is a little bit more complex, but we take all of the current values that we have set up, take this color node and break it up. We'll make a structure class. The structure classes are a little bit weird, but basically they are a single variable that will hold multiple variables. So you can make your own right here. You can just do add new variables, and then you can assign to whatever you want. Go ahead and delete that. I don't need that right now. Now that we basically pre-define all of our options, and I needed to fix this a little bit, it was kind of messy, but now we save it as a variable right here. I'm gonna go ahead and minimize these. Now that we have all this variable, we'll make a custom function on our buff. This will get passed via client, so we have our buff, and list of options. We'll take it from the UI. The UI will run on the buff will handle taking this information, all that was saved over the UI, and then we'll pass it to the server. Then the server will take it and we'll pass it to both the server and the client. We will then save it. We will not multicast this replicated value. Only reason is because we're doing it on run on multiple. If we set this here on server, then we do need to multicast. But in this case, we're just going to run this multiple, so we won't multicast it. We'll then take this information and pass it back to our cube. So we walk back to the cube. So my cube, and we can assign the my cube that was assigned when we gave the buff. And then we'll pass it back to the save info. We'll then save the info on the buff or on the structure. We have our my info that is coming in from the UI and the buff, technically the buff. We'll do a save game, so we'll save this information. And then we will dynamically take this information and we will make a subgraph. In order to do a functional graph, what you do is you just basically click this, and this is your new function. You can pass any information you want here. Anything done here can be local, meaning you can make your own variable, but this variable will not. This variable will auto-delete when this function ends. So this variable is not important. It's considered a temp. Go ahead and delete this for a moment. I don't need it. Anyway, we go into our update material. All we're doing here is we're taking our structure class. We are creating a temporarily. All we're doing here is we're taking the master material, and here's the master material option. We're taking the instance just so it loads a little bit quicker. We'll go ahead and save it as a temp variable. This is the local variable down here. And then we know that this 9 different values and we need it all set. So we'll go ahead and do a for loop. We know the array index count, so we'll start at 1 and we'll go all the way through to 9. And in order to do this, it is a little bit messy, but all we're doing here is we're looking at our options. We're storing them into a select section. And then the index will select which option we are currently on. We don't do 0 just because. And then we also do a name, a parameter name. And then we'll just basically set the parameter name by the index and then the value. But this all gets selected out. Once that is all good, if for any reason that our material fails to generate, we'll do a valid check. If it is valid, then we'll return it. In order to do a return node like this, you just type return, and then you can add your own variables here. Once we return, we'll go compile, go to event graph. So now that we take our info from the UI, from the buff, we parse it for material. Now we have a material, and now we'll just simply pass it into the structure. And that is everything we do. And this happens on all multicast. I know this was kind of a lot to go over, but that is, in a nutshell, the reason why this was done automatically, what I had to work with. And so if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But yeah, that is how you do a functional system. In my case, I'm going to actually make some updates. I need to validate that, okay, well, if our structure that we put down is default, then we need to automatically switch it. So I'll do my own system through the structure in this case, because the information's already existing.